So I would like to welcome everybody to the second of the two workshops as part of Building Your Research Foundations. This is a tricky one because these are short presentations, and this is a very big topic that deserves, even parts of it deserves its own presentation, as I like to say. So it's called Evaluate Online Information, and basically it deals with when you are doing an assignment and you have to go online and you're going to start Googling. So a couple of things to keep in mind as we go, and that is Google is a search engine and not a truth engine. And I think, it sounds redundant, but I think it's also important to acknowledge that, because the skills that we do on our assignments where we have to find credible information, and we'll get into a little bit of that, becomes a skill that is transferable to your everyday life. And you might even do some of these things on an unconscious level. So my name is Fatima DeMello. I am a reference technician here at Red River College Polytechnic. I work at both campuses, both at Notre Dame and EDC, the downtown campus, or otherwise known as Roblin Center. In addition to what you're seeing here, I am also I talk about the Building Your Foundation universe, the academic universe, as kind of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so feel like we're all assembling. I also feel that audiobooks are books as well. So that's a little bit about me. So like I said, we don't have that much time, and I know your time is valuable. So much like I did last time, I split it up into two parts. So we're going to identify the challenges of evaluating online information. I'm also going to briefly explain, and you're going to see a lot of brief explanations, but hopefully that'll help you focus your questions a little bit, because it's hard to get started. It's hard to ask questions when you just don't know. So we'll look at the traits that will help you evaluate credible information online, and also the skills, because they can be learned with time. But I'm also going to introduce two information frameworks, one that is familiar to everybody here on campus and one that is a little newer that I really quite like as well. And that is CRAP and SIFT. And we'll get into these two acronyms a little bit later on in the presentation, a little bit of a brief overview, and sort of some of their pros and cons as well. So let's look at the challenges to evaluating information. Yes, it can be overwhelming. And here's the important thing. Google was created by humans, and it has all the faults of humans. It means there's a certain sector of people who designed it. They have certain types of biases. They ignore information from other groups. And that's because, as I said, search engines are human. However, Google is something monumental that has helped us democratize information, that has helped people advocate for themselves, have helped groups advocate for themselves, as well as, not done great things for society as well. And I think our mission now going forward is to help you get those skills, not only for that A on your assignment or that B on your assignment, but also to evaluate the information that you see online. Ask yourself, what are you looking at? So we're just practicing information evaluation online, and that puts control of it in your hands as well, and to put control of it in your hands responsibly, because we hear people saying, I've done my research, but you don't use information as a cudgel, or to bat somebody over the head with. You use it responsibly. So oftentimes you hear, find yourself credible information, or credible sources. So what does that mean? And it's one word to describe really many things involved in information evaluation. And sometimes when it's you hear the word critically evaluate credible information. And again, I want us to step back, especially because we sometimes use these words quite a lot. So sometimes when we say critically, we want to say we're critical of another person, I'm right, you're wrong. And so I want us to step back. And evaluating information, and especially credible information, means to look closer to, and credible sometimes means true, because and I heard it, people talk about, well, when you find true information, when you find accurate information, but it can also mean persuasive, it can also mean true, it can also mean reliable information that is reliable, especially if you're going to be using it as evidence in a paper, and information that is valid. So a lot of these things are interchangeable and are under the credible banner. One word I didn't include, but it is implied, is factual. And again, this is an overview, and I don't talk about information literacy. I think the term I really like better is information hygiene. So we're talking about practicing information hygiene. So it's an ongoing practice. So much like you take care of your teeth, or if you have a facial regime, or you take a shower, when you were young, you probably didn't do it right. You probably didn't brush your teeth properly, but you learned a little bit over time. You probably didn't floss consistently, even though you know it's good for your gums, but that comes over time. Let's say you start doing it in the morning and then you start to build that habit to doing it in the evening, for instance. So it's a funny metaphor, but I think it's a way to communicate to people. We want to make sure that we practice good information hygiene. In other words, if we're on social media, to pass along information that's accurate as much as possible. It is a challenge, and also to do that even within our own assignments as well. So what are the challenges? Well, it's 24/7. It is 24 hours, 7 days a week, and it is all the time. It is people uploading information all the time around the world. It is the algorithm involved. Google still doesn't share how their algorithm works. So you don't know if you are in what's called a filter bubble. So it just keeps you someplace. And that depends on the terms that you use. The terms that you use in the search box. So it basically whatever you put in gets reflected back. Overestimating search skills. I've done my research. One of the best things, as I said, about Google is it does democratize information, and it's so intuitive, but sometimes people underestimate what they're seeing, especially on issues that have nuance. And that's important when you're sort of writing a paper and you're comparing and contrasting, or you're making a persuasive argument. So you have to be careful in terms of kind of having a utility of humility is a term I've come across, of kind of going, I'm good at this, I can be better at this, but I have to be careful as well. So I will talk a little bit about bias. We've all got it, I've got it, you got it, everyone's got it. There's also information overwhelm, and that is the overwhelming amount of information that is coming at us. It is overwhelming, and I know that a lot of people shut off the computer, they shut off their phone. Sometimes it's good to unplug and be bored because there's so much coming at us. And also bad actors who look good. That is the new challenge as we move forward with technology. And that is people who, how many times have you heard people go, but I believe that person because they look a certain way, they act a certain way. Information, especially the people who put out information, will make sure that that information passes all the tests. In order for it to literally go viral. There's a reason why we use the term go viral. So what kind of skills do we need to meet those challenges? A healthy curiosity. And oftentimes we talk about people who are gullible, but most people don't talk enough about cynicism, which dismisses everything. If being gullible, if believing everything is bad, dismissing everything right on site is not even better. Going to extremes really doesn't help. Being aware of your own biases. And we are human. We have our blind spots. We have things we don't realize we are doing until someone points them out or we discover it one day. It even happens on online presentations. And there are many biases. I just named kind of the top three that I've seen, that I've experienced, that other people have talked about experience. They're kind of common, but like I said, there's a lot more. It may be the third one, but it's important when it comes to Googling. Google tries to give you the things you think it thinks you need based on the words you put into that search bar. And again, the search words are important. There's a billion-dollar industry surrounding Google called search engine optimization. That's SEO. And what it does is companies spend money learning the algorithm to make sure that their results go further and further up the rankings in Google so that the most people can see it. There's a joke that people often say. It goes something like, where can you hide a dead body? And the answer is page 2 of Google results. And it shows people don't, I heard it was over 90%. Now I've read it's 70. I've read in other places it's 60. But people don't advance beyond the first page of Google. They often don't go beyond the first page of a database too. Because again, we are human, we're pressed for time. But again, carefully considering your search terms are important. The last one surprised me, and that was from a guy named Mike Caulfield. And it makes sense. We tend to click on hyperlinks when we're on a site that we're evaluating. We tend to click on the hyperlinks, like all the hyperlinks, because we want to know where this information comes from. There is a danger when you just click, 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 click. And one of them is a common one. You lose focus. So you go down what people call rabbit holes, but basically you lose focus and then you realize, oh, I have to go back to what I was doing. You lose track of time. You lose track of the thoughts that you're looking for. But also sometimes those very links, when you click on one link and you go to another link and you go to another link and you're trying to trace it, especially if you don't get off that page, you often find yourself in what's called a filter bubble. And people don't know that. They don't know that the things that they search for often comes up as advertising, or if you go on YouTube and you watch cat videos, of course it'll recommend a lot of cat videos, but maybe you want to see like an iguana, but iguanas are not exactly like, they're not exactly popular, but you want information on iguanas, but you keep clicking on information on cats. It's a sort of a off-the-cuff metaphor, but it's part of the reason why you just kind of practice the restraint when you're clicking through various links. So remember, still click hyperlinks. I'm not saying don't, but it's not the only way to verify information. So I'm going to go right into biases, and like I said, there's a lot, and this is one of my favorite cartoons, something we've heard all the time, and we've spoke a bit about not going beyond that first page. So there's a top three. There's a top three biases. And again, I had to crunch these into little bite-sized pieces of information. The most common one, of course, is confirmation bias, and everybody does it. We are creatures that want to confirm what's going on for both good and for not so good. So it's finding information to fit a belief. However, we don't talk nearly enough about halo. Halo biases are forming opinions based on fixed characteristics. So it's putting in, how angels have halos? It's kind of like putting a halo around, for instance, you put a halo around a doctor. Doctors can do no wrong. So you believe everything that a doctor tells you, even though you don't really closely examine, where this doctor practices from, what is their background, what are they saying, has what they said been proven? That's just one example. Nonprofits Our nonprofit organizations have halos. Educational institutions have halos. And part of the reason why I wanted to bring up halo bias is the most common thing we teach people when it comes to information is look at the address. Is it .org? Is it .edu? Is it .ca? Is it .com, .gov, etc.? And sometimes we put certain halos, certain opinions around surrounding it for both good or for ill. And we have to be kind of careful to not say this is all good or this is all bad. And the third one is one I am admitting that I do a lot. And I made sure that when I sat down and did this that I didn't do this to you. And that's called curse of knowledge. And it's also called the curse of expertise. And really what happens is that people, when they start to get better and better at something, whether it's, for instance, something like this, something like information literacy or information hygiene, I've been reading about it and trying to practice for so long that if somebody says, how do you do it? I have to, again, trace my steps and remember how it's done, because it assumes that people have a common knowledge, that people know how to search for information. So again, we have to be careful and not be patronizing. That's not the thing. It's honoring what people don't know to help them know. And also it keeps us humble as well. Remember, utility of humility. Which brings us to CRAP and SIFT. And again, they're the ways to frame information evaluation. So there are several information literacy frameworks, and basically they're there to help people understand the information they see. So before I talk about these two, a word about the word framework, because you often hear that word in construction, and you know, we talk about the framework of a building. It's either a structure that's, you know, we set up the structure and then you build the structure surrounding it. It's a guide, whether it's the beams or it's the designer plans. And when libraries talk about information frameworks, we have 6 pillars that we keep in mind when we're talking about information and gathering information with people. And that is, authority is constructed and contextual. Always think about the context. What's the situation? Who's the person constructing it? And getting that complete picture. SIFT talks a lot about context and tracing claims. Information creation is a process. It is also a messy process. The internet is messy, but we're always constructing information, and that also from the consummation, how we consume it, and then incorporate it, and also what gets put on the internet as well. Information has value. Again, another number 3 that's really, really important, because that is what's going on. It's what happened in 2016 with a lot of the misinformation and disinformation campaigns that happened during the US election. It's how information is sometimes used to set groups against each other. It has value. Information has power. And I know that it's a cliche that's been done to death, but it truly has value, because one detail, one piece of information can prevent a misunderstanding. So before I go on to CRAP and SIFT, there's a reason why these guys have been given their names. So they're acronyms, and they're tied into things that people would recognize. For instance, CRAP, which is an idiom that we use in the English language that people from other countries don't quite understand or may be confused about, but we do it as a way to what we call detect BS, to detect really bad information. And SIFT, which is the other one that we're looking at, when you sift flour, for instance, you get the lumps out. So you can actually get something that you can use in an ingredient. You know, you're baking a pie, you're baking information. And again, when it comes to CRAP, which is the one on the left, it's not necessarily like when I talk a little bit more about the CRAP test, sometimes there's a museum in Japan that actually is the Museum of Poop, and it's all sorts of um, pastel colors, all sorts of funky uh, ways of looking at the poop emoji. And I realized that's kind of a good way to talk about information, about how something really, really stinky could be dressed up. Um, but really, I don't want this to be an either or. I don't want it to be, you must use crap, you must use SIFT. I think you can use both. I think sometimes you use both depending on the situation. I think it depends on your time of your life. And CRAP was the earliest information framework. It was created by a librarian in California in 2004. SIFT is something new. It's newer. It was created in 2017. It's a little bit more sophisticated. It doesn't mean that CRAP is not a good framework, and it doesn't mean that don't use SIFT because it's too new. They both have shortcomings, but misinformation online happens when people simply spread information without looking into it. Again, ask yourself, what are you looking at? And people engaging deliberately in planting information to spread count on that. They count on people not reading it and just spreading it for whatever agenda they have. And they're counting on it. And it's not a conspiracy, it's what exactly is happening. And they call it going viral for a reason. It's kind of information, just like good information, when it goes viral is uplifting. When something bad goes viral, it acts the same way as a virus. So basically, I want you to take a look at CRAP. It's, like I said, it's one of the older information frameworks. It's the one that's used the most. It's on our information and web evaluation guide on our website. And basically, it looks at currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. So currency, of course, means the time. So you're on this website, you're looking at, does it have a date? Has it been revised? How current's the information? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Depending on what you're looking for. Information changes. So maybe you might want something older to compare with new information on the topic. Relevance speaks to the audience, of course. Who is the source intended for? A source for an elementary school audience is different from one from a college audience. Authority. So again, authority is contextual. Who is qualified to write about it? That one is constantly in flux. And accuracy, of course, is what's the supporting, what's the evidence on your chosen source? Where does the information come from? And basically, you are still on this information. The earlier ones, it still talks a little bit about looking at grammar and punctuation, but those sorts of typos are happening a lot more rarely. Which brings us to purpose, and that's the how and why of a source, and can you spot the biases? So you're expected to stay here, take a look at it, and you don't get off it. So you can get a full picture. You're drilling down on the source. And then sometimes I think what's missing, and you'll see it in the disadvantages, getting off it to verify your information. So as I said before, there are some advantages and disadvantages. It is good for novices, people who are just starting out and being more conscious of information hygiene. It's simple. It's structured, of course, but people also talk about it like it's the CRAP test. And not everything passes the CRAP test. It's not as, especially now, things are not as simple. People often don't get off the page and they forget about verifying that information, going someplace else. And sometimes parodies, like how do you know that something's a parody? Like a website might be a parody and it might flunk the CRAP test. So, but again, knowing a disadvantage doesn't mean that this is a completely terrible tool. I still think, and I know people who are still using this particular verification. So I never, like I said, sometimes you might want to go back and forth between the two, or you might just grow out of it. Again, your journey is different. Yes, and current doesn't mean good. So SIFT is a bit different. It stands for Stop, Investigate, Find Better Coverage, Trace Claims, Quotes, and Media to the Original Source. So Mike Caulfield is the man who created this framework, and he wants people to get off the page first, and that's counterintuitive. But basically he wants people to stop and think about what they're looking at. And he constantly says, what are you looking at? So when you come across a website or an article, this is what he recommends. Keep the website in one tab. Open up maybe 2, 3, whatever, how many tabs you do. From that website or from that online article, take one piece of that information. Maybe it's the group that it's looking at. Put it in another tab. Look at what's being written about this group. You do the same thing for, let's say they refer to an article. There was an article I read about the World Health Organization, sort of talking about myocarditis, heart inflammation in relation to the COVID vaccine, but saying it's better to get the vaccine than not. But of course, people just look at the heart inflammation part, which happens in a few cases, and suddenly that's what they go with. So I opened up a couple of tabs and I looked at the World Health Organization website, and I also had the tab open to our library because I wanted to find that article. So you just open as many tabs as you can for any details that you can search. And one of the really interesting things is he also recommends going to Wikipedia. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. So basically, SIFT asks us to be fact checkers. So they talk about reading laterally, reading about what is being written about the site or the article. That's what the other tabs are for. It's an emphasis on context. So instead of doing one isolated page, you go and you sort of read about the topic, you read about the person and get more information as well. And I mentioned Wikipedia, and it's not just the main post. Scroll to the bottom and go to the sources below and click on them. Yeah, some of them might be articles in in databases that are only subscribed by certain institutions, but there's a lot of really good open stuff out there too. But there are some disadvantages. I am a fan of this framework, and I know there's disadvantages. It assumes a lot from an individual. It assumes a lot from people. It's kind of a bit like a curse of knowledge situation. And people might not be ready for it. And that's where CRAP is still useful. And look, you have a paper, a presentation, and you got 5 other things to do, and it's hard, which is why often when we coach people on using library materials or using our databases, we talk a lot about keywords, finding the right things to put in, and also time management, so that way nobody has to feel like they're rushed and they can take that time, even if it's 20 minutes. I'm a big fan of 20 to 25 minutes. So just summary, as I mentioned, it's not impossible. It's just challenging, and just embrace that challenge and to have a healthy curiosity. Don't be gullible, but don't be a cynic. Don't be so dismissive. Just ask yourself, what is it that I'm looking at? And start from there. Know your biases. So, I mean, I'm a fan of SIFT, but I'm a fan of, journalists and communicators and I kind of know that, okay, but I know that they're human beings as well. So know your biases, know what you're trying to confirm. And again, CRAP and SIFT act as structures. So they're just guides to help your evaluation. And then it becomes kind of second nature after a while, but it takes time. It's a skill that's to practice. So it's part of the lifelong learning piece. So on one hand, you're evaluating credible information for an assignment, and on the other hand, you want the skill to develop for the rest of your life as well, and to keep returning to it as well. So again, that is all for evaluating information for now. I don't know about any upcoming Building Your Foundation workshops, especially from the Academic Success Center. I am working on possibly doing some more in the fall. Look at our website, also look in our staff and student news. And again, a plug for Library and Academic Services. We are two units. That is Library Services, where actually I'm part of Information and Program Delivery. I'm the people who sit up front, myself and my colleagues, and the Academic Success Center. So we do things like tutoring. We do, research help, databases, depending on which unit does it. And I wanted to remind you where we're located, especially on our website, www.library.rrc.ca. Reminding you where we're located. And again, if you can't make it down, you could see us on our Ask Us chat, and that's that little guy right here. You might have to go through the bot a little bit, but you can still get a person within our hours. So if you have any questions, like I said, this is an overview. Please, please, please contact me or contact one of my colleagues as well if you can't reach me. Thank you so much for coming out.